Hello and welcome back to my channel, and we continue with our solo classic traveller campaign. This is session 2. I am now going to start going through some of the mechanics and kind of outline basically some of the ground rules for the campaign that I'm going to be performing. There was one thing I did omit from some of the inspirational material that I had back in the 1970s, and this was I don't know whether this will be familiar with some of the people in this. Was a series of books by this chap called Stuart Cowley. I think he's a UK-based writer. And he accumulated all these amazing illustrations from probably the covers of science fiction books and out of magazines and things. And this really captured our imagination back in the 70s. And I can remember it posited a kind of a scenario called this Terran Trade Authority, which was kind of like a benevolent kind of world power that had a kind of control over the jurisdiction of planets that that humans had been colonizing, and they came into contact with intelligent aliens that occupied Alpha Centauri and Proxima Centauri, and the Proximans proved to be quite belligerent, and they ended in a war, and this kind of went through all the different types of spaceships. It kind of matched the kind of art to the different types of spaceships that each of those nationalities had, and we were absolutely enraptured with it. So this was a big influence. Some of this art is astounding. It really is. And that's the type of level of visualization that you could get in the 70s. So you don't need, that's effectively our internet art, but it's in a nice book. So he did this thing, spacecraft 2000 to 2100. And the one after that I got was this one called The Great Space Battles, and this described the conflicts that they had with the Proximans, this war, and then also another one that they had with, I think, called the Lagoonans, who were kind of just this strange power that they discovered, that they thought, oh, well, this will be a kind of walkover, and I think they almost like destroyed the Trade Federation. So some of these probably do. I'm sure that picture there. I'm sure that was a front cover of White Dwarf in one instance. So they were using kind of like stock art from the time, but look at that. It's so evocative, isn't it? Beautiful pictures. And the final one, which would probably really got me thinking, is applicable to Traveller, space wrecks, and this talks about derelicts in space. The famous derelict in space that you come across, and you have to, the airlocks join. You open the corridor and it's all dark, and there's that kind of, it's almost like fine grains of dust floating around in the zero gravity, and who knows what is lurking inside the Hulk. That is I'm sure that is a White Dwarf cover too. And this had lots of stories about those type of things. So if I even pull out, whoa. So that is the final piece in the jigsaw. My inspiration, set 1970s. There was plenty of good stimulating material back then. I'm going to use all that as input to my campaign. Already got the juices flowing, because I'm thinking, whoa, I'm going to get all these inputs coming into it. They're all going to be flying around in their eagles, um, blasting away. The Liberator will be coming out, dusting itself off. It'll be great fun. Okay, back to Traveller. I have got, I had said I had 7 steps to, sorry, 8 steps. Now I've just quickly revised it. I've got 7 steps. I did a bit of consolidation. I thought there's probably no need to do 8 steps when you can do it in 7. This is my template, similar to what I had for my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons campaign, to the 7 steps to getting a campaign up and running, self-sufficient. It kind of ticks over by itself. There's a few mechanisms in there that I'm going to use to support. It's like a support model for my overall campaign development. I think with the hindsight and the experience of running my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons campaign, I can bring to the Traveller campaign my experience from that, and be able to try out maybe some different mechanisms and some different techniques to help me navigate my way through what is effectively a radically different environment. Science fiction and fantasy, they might be on the same part of the bookshelf in your bookstore, but they are quite different genres. Science fiction can lead down all sorts of different paths. Fantasy maybe a bit more constrained, even though it covers things like magic and whatever. It tends to be rooted in a human-centric, pseudo-medieval type environment, whereas Traveller can be basically anything you want. It can include fantasy worlds in it. Who's to say that we don't come across we get sucked into some giant computer and it generates a fantasy world. We might be able to even go to the Northern Marches, for example. That might be a computer simulation for all we know. That can happen in Traveller, but it couldn't probably happen the other way around. So I'm dealing with a completely different environment. So maybe I need a different set of mechanisms to deal with that. However, I think I can still use the basis and the experience that I've got through the solo campaign for Dungeons and Dragons, and apply that, just that kind of common sense, to Traveller. And I think Traveller is completely suited to that type of approach. It's got an awful lot of kind of intrinsic surprise and randomness in it already. As soon as you start rolling up characters, as soon as you start rolling up planets, it just starts, you start asking questions about, why has it got a hydrographic percentage of 20%, and the atmosphere is corrosive, and you start, piecing those things together, and it just becomes a kind of snowball effect. And in the end, you've got this fully fleshed out world, which is quite interesting and unique, and you've just generated it yourself, and it's quite a rewarding experience. So I'm hoping that that's going to be a big factor in this campaign. But just to get back to my 7 steps, the first one is character generation, and I am going to create the characters with a party randomly generated. Ooh. I tried this out for my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons party. I used the appendices at the back. There is an appendix for if you came across an NPC party in a dungeon, this is what you would generate as the components. I'm going to try and apply the same ground rules and principles to Traveller, and basically generate my party randomly. Obviously, with the actual career progression, we'll just follow the standard rules. But the way I can select the individuals in the party, their sex, their what careers they're going to move into, will be randomly selected. So that will be quite a fun little mini game, I think, just to kind of generate what our party is. And I do have specific guidelines to do with that. So that's our party that we will start with. And then once we've got our party fleshed out, maybe got their personalities decided, I'm going to generate a starting world where the characters meet and begin their adventures. And that'll just be following the standard process where we have a blank subsector map, which is I think 8 by 11 hexes. I am just going to stick a planet probably round about in the middle and say that's where we start. Nothing fancy, right in the middle of the subsector, and that's our starting world. And I'll just generate that, and then I'll go through the planetary stats, determine its ecology and culture. From that, I'll make inferences, and I'll have techniques as I go through that to try and get the connections. And then also I'll keep a note of any interesting or potential adventure points that emerge. So I think this is an important thing. Whenever I'm doing stuff in the campaign, I'm always making a little note of anything important, anything interesting, anything that maybe could be, I think I called this threads in my AD&D campaign. Think of adventure points as threads. These are things that maybe will be of significance later on down the line. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just dissipate into nothing. But it's worthwhile taking a kind of note of them and jotting them down in the notepad and using them for future reference. And I'll be monitoring them as part of the mechanic on a regular basis. Okay, so we've got our characters, we've got our starting world. We'll be naming them, giving them nice names, good, interesting starting world names. We'll place, for step 3, we'll place those characters in the starport, which is the classic place to start, equivalent to my Green Dragon Inn. We have the starport. And I thought, in the original Traveller, we've got a Traveller's Aid Society. And I thought I would have something even more extensive than that. It'll be a mega corporation that runs some hotels across known space, and we could call it the Dragon Corporation, for want of a better name. And they run specific hotels in starports, which are used as havens for travellers. And because our travellers are kind of specific adventurer types, they naturally migrate to those. So we're going to have like dragon hotels everywhere. Because I think Traveller Age Societies only appear in starports A and B. So wherever there's a gap in the market, you'll have a dragon hotel, and that's where you could stay. Obviously, I'm going to explain that in a bit more detail further down the line. But that's where we'll begin. And then what they do is, for the first adventure, we'll have them searching for a patron and employment. And there are mechanics in this book which deal with, in fact, I'll just get to the encounters bit. Here we go. Yeah. So there are rules for generating patrons, generating rumours, random encounters, animal encounters, legal encounters, adventure as necessary, and routine encounters. And I've gone through all this, and I've kind of thought, right, I'll sort all this out into a logical kind of structure, and I've got a mechanic that deals with all these these encounter types in a kind of logical manner. So that the idea of that is that we'll have a patron with a mission generated. If we don't get one after, say, 3 days searching, I'm going to seed that into the game. This is only for the first adventure, so that we have a kind of situation where we will get something happening in that starport. And it's difficult for me to explain this just now because it sounds all kind of theoretical and high level and whatever. But when we actually get down to the nitty gritty, it'll probably become quite clear that I'm not talking about, I'm just going to say, right, okay, here's the patron, he comes along, bang, bang. It's all going to be quite randomized. I think if you're watching my AD&D channel, you'll know that I usually try to do everything randomly. I don't like to force things. I don't like to just contrive it. If I do want to bring something in, I'll bring it in kind of randomly or as an option. There's always a chance it won't be, it'll be rejected. But that's the way I want to. That's kind of my modus operandi on this campaign. Right, so if we move on to 4, this is the far more the esoteric kind of paragraph. Read this as you wish. I understand it. It's maybe quite a difficult concept to come across just straight off the bat, but let's give it a go. So once the party has completed their first mission, the campaign should develop organically, with patron searching and random encounters generating enough avenues of adventure. So what I'm saying is that it's self-perpetuating, or it should be. The mechanics I've got there, they should generate enough to keep us going. On the back of that, we can use any interactions, rumours and discoveries to shape the campaign and develop the setting. So they'll feed into these adventure points. We'll be building up lore about the background, the setting. We'll have interesting NPCs that we'll be listing. They'll all be going into little pools of data, categorized either by like person, place, type of rumor, that type of thing. We'll regularly revisit the adventure points, these ones that we're making a note of at each step, and assess how they can be incorporated into the ongoing campaign. So I'll have a mechanism to feed, almost like a feedback loop, to get those points back into the campaign, but done in a very organic, natural kind of way, not shoehorned in. I definitely don't want that kind of contrivance. So that is, as I say, quite esoteric. It's a case of really using judgment and fairness, always fairness, and the random element wherever possible. Okay, I hope you're still with me. Point 5. In parallel, operate a random events and background mechanic to develop the subsector and allow it to evolve with play. So what I'm saying is, I'd quite like, while the characters are doing the micro stuff, they're doing the little adventures, there's a subsector round about them, and that's developing at the same time. And they're getting to know more about it. More information's coming to light. We're finding more about this Imperium that is the overarching power. We're finding maybe more about some of the NPCs that we're developing and more about their background. This mechanic is designed to administer all that. So in the overall environment itself, I'm assuming a frontier zone at the edge of an Imperium-like power. So that's the big geopolitical setup. The central conceit of this is we're right on the frontier, and this is a debatable zone. It's not occupied by this Imperium power. It's either contested or it's just not being occupied. Um, it's not used its aggressive forces to assert dominance. Now, as we develop this Imperium, we might find out its complexion is evolving, and maybe it's more autocratic than we initially thought, or maybe it's more democratic. It could swing. But at this stage, I'm saying it's much more a kind of remote central power. It's there, but it's not. If you see what I mean, it's got influence in this region, but it's not dominant. And whenever I come to generate a planet, I'll have what's called an imperial index, which is basically how much influence does the Imperium have on this world, and that will include the starting world too. Okay. So, the final thing we need to do is decide where the central power is located, with 1d4 determining which side of the subsector map. So, yeah, so that sounds a bit simplistic, but let's find out just exactly where the Imperium is. And I'll probably be doing that quite early. These steps don't have to be all done in a logical order, and they're not really designed to. Maybe the first three. Thereafter, it's all evolving kind of in tandem or in parallel. Moving on, if we get to point 6, we expand the subsector map into the local area, which is 2 hexes outwards. So imagine that we've got our hex map, we've got our central point, we start expanding out and populate the stars, the worlds there. And we generate the worlds occupying this space. And then we really kind of go to town on world creation. Now, I might bring in world creation a bit earlier, because say the characters get a mission that's here, up in the starting mission, that says, well, you need to go off-world, you need to go somewhere. I'll probably try to constrain it so it's more kind of on-world, but there's always the chance that our mission will take us off-world, and then I'll have to start developing the other planets earlier than I did originally anticipated. But that's just comes with the territory. Traveller is going to be a very fluid type of animal to I'm not going to be able to tame this animal. It's a kind of you've got to kind of ride on the bucking bronco type analogy. That's maybe the way to think of it. You just try to stay on. And at the end, whether you can get to the finish line. Okay, the final step, and the one that's probably the thread that's running all the way through this is I'll be running a calendar system to govern the passage of time in the campaign and to administer the adventure points. So that's effectively what I would call my AD&D threads, and the events background mechanics, which is basically evolving the subsector, its geopolitical situation, its factions, its imperial stance, all those good things, the sort of macro things, impinging on the micro as the characters. And between the two, the macro and the micro, we'll meet, and then we'll have a unified whole. And the idea is that we create through all this mix, we create a consistent setting, and it's a setting that for me as a solo player, I want to bring in as many of those influences that I was talking about in the first episode as possible. So they feature highly in the complexion and the stance of this universe that I'm creating, and I just like it to I'm as interested as you are in finding out exactly what this will uncover and reveal. Even down to the first thing of just what our characters are going to be like. That's going to be quite entertaining and interesting. I could get I could get 5 army recruits. You know, it's random. You know, it could be anything. 5 pirates, maybe not. You know, anything. So it's a voyage of discovery on that one. Okay, but what I'll be doing occasionally through the process. Let's say we get to episode 10. I'll probably come back and revisit this and see how we're getting on. See whether we can tick ourselves off. I think if we get into this territory here, it's self-perpetuating, and it should just keep on ticking over by itself. We shouldn't really need to do too much maintenance, and it will be a case of just maintenance. We'll have maybe several different groups of characters operating. In the AD&D campaign, I've only got one set, but there's nothing to say that I wouldn't have 2 or 3 groups operating. It just so happens I've still got one. They've survived. I can't believe it. But there you go. It might be a different story. You know, it's quite a killer set of rules, Traveller. I think the idea with Traveller is that you use your brain, not brawn, and you're to try to avoid conflict if possible, and only have conflict, like any good soldier would tell you, when you have overwhelming odds and you can win. So that's what the Traveller combat system is. The good side is that it's sometimes very difficult to hit someone because you've usually got a pretty decent armor on. But if you do get hit, you're in a world of pain, really. Because it's got a first strike ability which takes it off one of your characteristics, and most weapons can do you quite a bit of damage and at least make you unconscious. Okay, enough about the actual mechanics. Let's go on to our this will be what we're doing first, which is character creation. And what I plan to do for this particular session is to just quickly run through these rules, give you an idea of where I come from, and then we'll quickly create our little band of characters, and you'll see how this starts to work. Well, that's the objective. Okay. So I've got my dice. I've got my Traveller dice here. I've got lots of black dice. I could do with getting a special Traveller dice tray. A nice black one, maybe. I think I used to have a black one, but I'll have to see if it's in the garage. I think that would be quite a nice touch. You know, to kind of differentiate it from the AD&D one. And also, I was thinking, you know, having this thing, this is quite nice actually. Having this, it's a bit like a kind of Tron type look. I should really be doing this for the AD&D one as well, because my table that I use is completely beat up. It's what I do all my modeling on and whatever. And I was looking at it just off, you know, off what I was doing in the center, and I was looking at the actual table itself, and it's completely covered in gashes and marks, and people must think, my goodness, Brian, what an absolute mess your table is. But you know, in my defense, it is my hobby table. It's designed just for me to score things and do, you know, I don't, you know, I've got paint all over it and all sorts of stuff. So it's a kind of working table. So I thought maybe the character, but then maybe I could have, you know, like reverse this and have a nice brown thing. I'll maybe play around with that idea. But it just got me thinking that this looked quite nice, you know, having this little, sci-fi look. Maybe I need a fantasy kind of look. It would probably be like tiles, you know, those sort of tile. But remember, I don't want to get too much of a modern vibe. I want to keep it the old school aesthetic. So maybe just having the actual table might be the best idea. Okay, character creation. So when we are coming to create our character party, what we're going to do is we're going to determine it randomly. It is composed of 3 to 5 individuals, and the sex of the character will be 50% female. Can't get fairer than that. We'll generate careers by rolling a d6 for selection of career path. So if you look at, excuse me, if you look at let's personal combat. Here we go. Now remember, there's a draft roll, so I'm just going to use this number to randomly select the career that I go for. So we'll generate careers by rolling d6 for selection of career path, and roll a further d12. So this is where we actually have a d12. Naughty, I know, but I don't really have much of an option. If others selected. So if we get others, this number 6, we roll a d12 on the citizens book. I don't actually have that in front of me. I'll have to get that one out. So once we've done that, we'll roll characteristics once the career path is selected. And for 2 of the characteristics highlighted in each career, roll 3d6 and take the highest of the 2. So say we get, just for sake of argument, we get army. Okay? We roll a 3 and our first character is army. We go ahead and roll his statistics. I was saying he, maybe it's a she. And I will look and see, on the basis of what the most important statistic is, we'll roll 3 dice instead of 2. Now, you could probably have a bit of discretion in this, but I would say the ones that are probably most important are things to do with, now let's see, dexterity gives you a plus on enlistment, but not as much as endurance. So endurance is probably more important. Endurance is important in commission. Education seems to be important. So I would say education and endurance would be our 2 key prerequisites for the army. And we would roll 3d6, not 2d6. So it kind of weights us, even though we're going into a profession that we're being almost forced into in the first place. Well, not really forced, but it's a random thing. And again, obviously, if we get the enlistment and we don't get enlisted, and we will just have to go for the draft again. And that means that you don't get things like commission or promotion in the first term. You just get your service skills. So that's basically how that works. When going through the career process, you interpret the results of the service history to generate the backstory. Introduce random incidents, create depth. Now that's a whole host of things that I'm talking about there. The illustration that they provide in the rules when you're doing the character is this chap called, I think he's called Jameson. He is a merchant. He looks like this. Looks a wee bit on the overweight side, maybe not quite as healthy. He's a merchant, and they give all this kind of history. And what I want to do is try and draw out that same level of kind of detail where he's doing things like he's doing exams, officer exams, and maybe he has a close call, he just survives something, and try to interject some interesting little anecdotes as we go through to generate a bit of character for those things. So really, this fancy sentence here, that really what that means. We're going to introduce random incidents to create depth, I call it. So I quite like my characters to be quite well, they don't have to be like completely fleshed out, because we will discover what they're like when we start adventuring them. But it'd be quite nice to have up front just a bit of personality to them. And talking about personality, we will come to that. Once we have our characters, we'll provide a brief rationale behind why the characters are working together and what they intend to achieve. Because I think that's important when you bring your characters together. we probably want to have some sort of rationale. Why are they all in this starport? And why would they be together in a little group? And I might do my famous rule of four. I'm going to have to use four-sided dice in this because I think the rule of six might be just a bit too much for options. I think it'd be a bit more of an onerous mechanic. So I'll still do the rule of four, and we might just have a rule of four to say, well, the characters met for such and such a reason, or something maybe a bit more novel. I really haven't thought completely about exactly how I'm going to do that, but I've got some kind of ideas. It can quite often be shaped by the type of party that we generate in the first place. And then the final thing, it will check each character for a personality trait. To gauge the level of this trait, you can use the scale of 1 to 6. So remember, I think in my AD&D campaign, I have this famous metric called the scale of 1 to 10, and that's always what we gauge. Well, now in Traveller, we have a scale of 1 to 6. We'll try to use the D6. D6 is king. We're going to try to use that on every instance. So it's a scale of 1 to 6 will be your personality. And as a way of illustrating, each character will be given a personality. And I really just went through a great big long list of personalities and jotted them down on this piece of paper. And you just roll your famous 2d6. And this is where we might have the red dice and the black dice. So the red dice comes first and the black dice is second. So say I roll a 1 and a 4, that's a 14. Resourceful, always finds a way to solve problems. Great. And I've got little blurbs after each one. So cowardly, easily intimidated and back down from challenges. And I've got good and bad and neutral. Cruel, shows a callous side. Fanatical, obsessive, utterly focused and committed to a cause. Impulsive, acts without thinking, often leading to trouble. Now, scale of 1 to 10, that'll tell you. And this is kind of just a very rough gauge of what the person's like. And I found that quite useful in the AD&D side. It gives a bit of shape and without really going to town with the personality. So that's what I'll do for each of the individuals. Just some quick things on some of the details. If we do use the Citizens Supplement, skills that are not core game are re-rolled on the equivalent others table in the main book. So if we ever come across that, I'll show you how that works. Skills that I am allowing, bow combat, prospecting, zero-G combat, gravitics, survival, hunting, and liaison. We're allowing all them. There is no use of the noble career for player characters. Substitute any result with the original other career option. The other career in here. So we go back to other, the famous other, and people say, well, what's other? Well, we're about to find out. And use the emergent character profile to determine their backstory and likely career path. So we might have a guy that's really good on things like forgery and kind of like spying type things. And we might say, well, he's not underworld. Maybe he's like an agent, a government agent in his previous life. He doesn't have to be a criminal. So I want to use a bit more imagination there. Also, to reflect the chance of other careers having survival, liaison, and zero-G combat skills, use the following chart if the characters have served more than 1 term for L1, so level 1, and more than 2 for an L2 chance. So I wanted to try and I thought that I would quite like to have some of these skills spread across some of these armed services, because I thought, well, they would probably have these if they knew about them. These appear in Mercenary and High Guard. If they knew about them, they would appear in these careers if they were part of the core rules in the first place. So I've kind of retrofitted them into those careers. And there's just a chance that we get them. So say I had a Marine. If he goes for more than 1 term, he'll get level 1 survival. If he goes for more than 2, there's a 10+ chance he gets up to level 2. Also, he'll get, well, he won't get If he goes for more than one turn, you'll get level 1 0G combat. So you imagine Marines, part of the basic training is probably survival, and also operating on a spaceship as the armed force that, boarding parties and all that kind of good stuff. And you'd expect them to be with that. Also, likewise with the scout, we'd expect maybe a liaison skill. And liaison for scouts, I'm going to say, is far more limited, because usually the liaison is much more to do with a diplomatic type thing. I think it's associated with the High Guard supplement, so you're expecting like naval personnel that are dealing with maybe other ambassadors or diplomats. But this one for the scouts would be far more applied when dealing with alien cultures. So not really too much tweaking. Just a few kind of almost like semantics really, and slight changes. Right, let's get to the fun bit, and what we'll do just to finish off this session is we will generate our starting party. So I will make sure that that's in line, and I will have we'll have our starting party. And what we do first is it's composed of 3 to 5. So that is going to be, say, I'm just going to try and use my my D6. So 3 will be 1 to 2. 4 will be 3 to 4. And 5 will be 5 to 6. So I'll get to use my traveller dice. So how many characters have we got in our group? We have got 4. So we start off with 4 characters. 4 characters. Okay, that's good. So we'll have character 1, character 2, character 3, and character 4. And we'll say, is this a male or a female? So number 1, 1 to 3, it's male. 4 to 5, 4 to 6 is female. So this is a female. Next one, male to female. Male. Male to female. Female. Male or female. Female. So we've got 3 ladies and 1 gent. Generate careers by rolling a d6 for selection of career path, and then roll a further d12 if others is selected. So, excuse me. Let's get our master plan out. We'll look at our table here. We'll roll a d6, and then remember, if we get 6, we go on to the citizens supplement. So what are we going to have? First character is going to be that's a 5, merchant. Okay, merchant. Yeah, that's 5. Next character, let's roll a red dice for this man. We'll do the man with red. He is a 3, and that is, he's army. Okay, he's army. Next character is army again. 2 armies. And the last character is a 2 Marines. Okay, so that's our starting party. And then I'm not going to do the statistics just now, but what I thought might be a bit of fun is just to give us a bit of colour. Let's work out their personality. because this is a bit like the AD&D one, where it's always quite good fun finding out exactly what these people are like. So the female merchant is going to be 44, independent. Excellent. Independent. An independent female character prefers to work alone and make their own decisions. Probably quite a neutral type thing. Work alone, a bit of a loner, but you know, independent. You know, the self-starter. Just get on with it. I think that's probably more positive. The male army. See what he gets. 43. Cautious. Thinks before acting, often avoiding unnecessary risks. Okay, so he's cautious. In fact, I'll put in brackets what these are so I can just refer to them quickly when it comes to it. The next female army recruit is 021s. Honest and truthful. Honest and truthful. Always speaks the truth, even when it's difficult. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? So that's there's a nice little group so far. So let's hope this marine is brave, courageous. That's what we need. We need courageous. 55. Oh, I don't like the sound of it. Oh no. Cruel. Shows a callous side. Okay. Well, you play with the cards you're dealt. 55. Again, maybe we'll just get a 1 on a 1 to 6. Shall we? Do we think we've got time to do the 1 to 6 to see how strong it is? So we'll do the strength. Let's see how independent this merchant is. 2. It's not a very strong trait. You know, she can overcome her independence sometimes and just work for the team. Cautious. Let's see if he's always cautious. He's quite a cautious fellow. He's probably maybe in the army. Maybe he was trying. You know, there'll be an interesting little. You know, this will inform some of the character developments when we actually do the career. Just the way they maybe approach survival roles or enlistment roles, or any of the commission roles. These things might have a bit of an impact. You know, that's quite an interesting dimension that we can bring in. A bit of personality. Honest and truthful. Let's see what it is. 2. So, you know, probably the basic traits, but not always all the time. And cruel. This is quite important because we really want like a 1, so it's not really that cruel. 4. Maybe they're just very ruthless in combat. You know, maybe this is something that is being honed. They could be. I suppose we could potentially be getting into a war crime situation with this one. It'll be interesting to see whether they survive the famous traveller character progression route. And remember that this is the big thing about Traveller, is that everybody kind of jokes about the fact that you can get killed off in character generation, and there is actually there's an override here in this version, which I am minded to use, because it goes on about optional rule. Here we go, survival. So each term of service involves some danger. You're telling me. During the term, a character must successfully throw his service's survival number to avoid death in the line of duty. Failure to successfully achieve the survival throw results in death. A new character must be generated. Okay, so that's the standard. But this version, this 1981 version, or 1982, I can't quite remember, has an optional rule. If the referee or player chooses prior to character generation, then a failure of the survivor roll can be converted to injury. The character is not dead. Instead, he or she is injured and leaves the service after recovery, having served only 2 years of the 4-year term. The short term is not counted for mustering out benefits. So maybe we do that. It really depends how attached we are. Maybe we can make an exception with the cruel Marine. I don't know. Maybe this Marine has got a nice side. It doesn't really sound too hopeful on that one, but maybe I'm just being a bit prejudicial. Cruel can, maybe I should be looking up the dictionary definition of cruel. I think most people kind of know what it is, but maybe there's a bit of nuance with this one. Well, I think I've probably done enough on this first one. What we'll do, we'll take this forward, and we've got our 4 characters. We'll generate their statistics, and we'll start running them through the professions, guided and informed by these things, and we'll be able to generate their stats based on what the key attributes are for each of these, and weight them so that they have a bit more of a chance for each of their professions. Okay, I think that was quite good getting through all that. We've got our little band, potential band. Let's see how that fleshes out in the next episode. Okay, well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.